Hello and welcome to the channel, my friends. It's Thunderbob here, and tonight we are going to talk about a franchise that is very close to my heart. Resident Evil. This is a series that has basically been there from my earliest gaming days. A series that has grown with me over the years, reinventing itself with each new release and with each new generation. Of all of the game series I have enjoyed over the decades, Resident Evil has the most impressive release cadence, while also maintaining a very high level of quality, with just a few missteps over the years. I've been playing these games at release for nearly 30 years now, but I've come to realize that while I've replayed a few of the games many times, like Resident Evil 4, there are a few that I've not played since that original release date many years ago, and there are at least 2 mainline games that I never actually completed. So my plan is to replay every mainline release in the series, including all of the numbered titles and the remakes. And I'm going to throw in Code Veronica and Revelations 1 and 2, even though it's debatable if those are mainline games. I'm going to play through the games in release order, and then put together a review and retrospective for each game individually. I intend to contrast my memories and feelings playing these games originally, years and decades ago, against how the games hold up today. I'm going to play through these games on the PC where available, and for the older titles with graphical mods to try to play these in the best possible light today. When I'm done with the entire series, I want to do a final video with my overall thoughts on the series and a ranking of all of the games. And a warning here, there will be some spoilers, but let's go ahead and get started. And tonight we will be discussing Resident Evil 2 Remake. In 2019, 2 years after the release of the spectacular and series-redefining Resident Evil 7, Capcom released a remake of one of the most beloved games in the series. This release continued the series' miraculous turn after the disastrous launch of Resident Evil 6. This is the first in a new series of remakes that Capcom produced that respected the original games, but updated the gameplay, graphics, and story to be more palatable to modern gamers. The remake updated the gameplay from the fixed camera angles of the original to a third-person perspective, but otherwise it feels very similar to the original. The locations are largely the same, and in some cases the layout is similar enough that you can use your existing knowledge from the original game to navigate around that police station. I think most critically, this remake retained the key survival horror aspects of the original trilogy, and reined in the action to produce a very terrifying yet fun game. The original Resident Evil 2 has long been one of my favorites in the series, and there were rumors for a long time that Capcom might be working on a remake. I can remember just like the fever pitch of anticipation before this got announced, and then after announcement, people were like, can they really live up to that original game? And that original game is quite special, and if you watched my video on the original, you remember that I played it originally on the Nintendo 64, which is certainly not the best way to play that game, but I really do love the original Resident Evil 2. And the remake really stands up. I think they both are special in different ways, and we'll get into that. But today I'm playing the remake on my PC in ultra-wide with basically everything maxed out. And this game looks great, and is basically a perfect replication of the 20-year-old environments into 3D. While I think the smaller locations of Resident Evil 7 may be better realized and look more realistic at times, the size and scope of this game is much larger. The character models look quite good and are very detailed, though I think they could use a few more zombie models, as you do start to recognize the few faces the game uses over and over. With that said, they're still terrifying to look at, and the way they take damage and fall apart is truly horrific. The locations are also quite well realized and full of detailed objects and decorations, and everything has a real lived-in end-of-the-world feeling. And beyond the visuals, the audio is very well executed here as well. The sounds the zombies make, the hissing and the moaning adds a lot to the scare factor. The music's also quite well done, and you start to recognize certain action cues, though, when you need to be ready for a fight. The voice acting and line reading is also top-notch, a lot more serious than in the original game, and makes the characters feel more like real people. Now let's talk about the structure of the game and the story. So this game starts with the selection of either Leon Kennedy, a rookie cop traveling to Raccoon City for his first day on the force, or Claire Redfield, the sister of Chris Redfield, who is searching for her missing brother. Depending on the character you pick, the game will be slightly different. The majority of the environments are the same, but each character has a few unique locations to visit, and the puzzles, item locations, weapons, and enemy encounters, and boss fights do sometimes differ. After you beat the game, there's also a second run where you play as the other character, playing out events differently, and the only way to see the true ending. So technically there are 4 distinct playthroughs here. You know, you have Leon A to Claire B, and Claire A to Leon B. The differences here are much smaller than the original game, and really just 2 playthroughs give you about 90% of the available content. And regardless of which character you pick, these 2 characters meet at a gas station in the outskirts of Raccoon City. There they are attacked by a pack of zombies, and they steal a police car and travel into the city together. And after a car accident, Leon and Claire are separated, and they travel different paths through the apocalyptic Raccoon City, avoiding the dead, and they quickly reach the police department. And the police department is quite similar to the original game, in that it is this giant puzzle box that slowly unfolds and requires a ton of exploration. You find keys, you solve puzzles, you unlock different weapons, which are again unique for each character. In addition to a ton of zombies, you're also quickly introduced to the iconic Licker. These guys are pretty frightening, and early on it can be best to just avoid them when possible. The remake also introduces Mr. X pretty early, who will relentlessly follow you around the police station. This is a change from the original game, where he was not even introduced until your second playthrough. Eventually, you make your way to an underground facility, where you fight the mutated William Birkin for the first time. And things start to diverge here a bit, where Claire meets Sherry Birkin, daughter of William, and Leon meets with Ada Wong. And this is where the 2 campaigns start to differ a little bit. So Sherry ends up getting kidnapped by Chief Irons, who is a demented serial killer, and Claire has to go and rescue her. And there's actually a section here where you play as Sherry. And in Leon's campaign, he spends more time in the sewers, and there's a section where you actually play as Ada. So that's the biggest difference between the 2 campaigns. Now, eventually, Claire manages to reach the orphanage and save Sherry, and they have a final showdown with Mr. X, who's chasing them, and gets eviscerated by William Birkin, which is odd because Leon fights and defeats Mr. X in his campaign, so how does he die twice? There are some inconsistencies here if you play these campaigns back to back. But in either case, Claire winds up in the sewers searching for Sherry, and you run into some new creatures to take down, and you find a bunch of chess pieces, and you have another fight with an even more mutated William, where you have to knock him off by launching cargo containers, and then you ride a train to escape after finding Sherry. And eventually both scenarios converge at the underground lab. The lab is full of these plant monsters that you have to burn to a crisp to prevent them from coming back to life. Then you have a final fight against William with the help of his wife Annette. And Sherry is saved, but Annette ends up dying. Now there are alarm bells ringing, and it's time to finally escape the lab. But you have one final confrontation on the train with William. Leon and Claire work together to stop him and escape. And then they adopt Sherry, or at least I wish they did. So I guess things turn out okay for her if you've played Resident Evil 6 or watched my video on that. So the overall story here is pretty simple, and I love it for keeping it simple. It's just 2 normal people thrown into this incredible situation, and the struggle to escape. The later game makes things so complicated, but you really don't need to know any of that to enjoy this story and the characters. That's not to say that there's not more going on here, and by reading the notes and files you won't get some deeper connection to the series, but rather the human story is the main driving force here. And the acting is much improved. Moments like Sherry losing her mom are done with a lot more gravitas than the older games could ever handle, and I think overall the acting and the story is quite well done here. The gameplay in the remake here is a great half step between the classic Resident Evil games and the more action-focused games like Resident Evil 4. You're given a good level of control over your character, but when you aim, it takes a second for your reticule to center to get the best shots. It makes you slow down and really think about each shot you take. The enemies also take an incredible amount of ammo to take down. The amount of bullets it can take to kill even a basic zombie can feel insane. I'm talking 8 pistol shots for them to go down sometimes. Then they may randomly get back up 1 or 2 more times as you pass through the area. I fired 100 SMG bullets into the head of a zombie to take them down. And it keeps every fight tense and encourages you to avoid combat, but also does start to get annoying after you need to travel through the same hall full of zombies a few times. You know, you think you've cleared it, and then a zombie you've killed twice already just randomly gets back up. I usually end up clearing a specific path through the police station and using it almost exclusively, even if it takes me longer to get around. Because of how quickly even a few zombies can take you down and how much ammo it takes to put them down for good, it helps maintain a sense of tension and fear that few games in the series match. I think for outright scares, this game comes in just behind Resident Evil 7, but that game goes for more of an atmospheric and body horror, where here the horror is the terror of being torn apart by ravenous and unstoppable zombies. The other enemies in the game are also equally terrifying. You know, the Lickers, just a great enemy. They can quickly pounce across the room and take half your health. The first time you try to walk by one without notice will leave your heart racing as you're just trying to slowly move across the room as they track you by sound and not movement or vision. But the real star of the show here is Mr. X. You know, he starts chasing you pretty early on in the police station, and he is one of the scariest enemies the series has ever introduced. The way he's always active in the police station, and the way you could hear him relentlessly searching for you as you try to avoid him, is one of the best additions in the game, as it is much more expanded from the original. In that game, you do not even encounter him until your second playthrough, and it was really just a few scripted sequences when you did encounter him in that second playthrough. Here for, you know, a good half of the game, he's just wandering the police station looking for you. It's not scripted. I mean, there are a couple of scripted moments, but for the most part, he is just actively in an area of the police station. And you can roll up on him, or he can randomly roll up on you, and you better get to a safe zone or run away quickly. And like most games in this series, I started out feeling very weak and lacking resources, but by the end of the game, I was so well stocked, it began to lose some of that fear. I also think the game peaks in the police station. This is one of the best and most realized set pieces the series has ever produced, and basically none of the later areas quite live up to those first few hours. And I need to touch on the zapping system that was such a big part of the original game, but is less well utilized here. In the original game, each campaign was much more divergent, with totally different encounters and bosses, and you really needed to play multiple times to get the full experience. In the remake, you can really see the majority of the content with just a single playthrough, and the A/B playthroughs reuse a lot of the same fights, even when it doesn't make sense from a story perspective. If you only plan to play through a single time, this is an improvement, but it gives you less of an incentive to replay the game and really dampers what was one of the coolest components of the original release. So final thoughts. This is an excellent remake, and I totally recommend everyone play it today. But I think both the original and the remake have different things going for them. The original made better use of the zapping system. You know, there were bigger changes in the subsequent playthroughs, and being able to leave items behind for the other player was pretty fun. The remake still has the multiple playthroughs, but the differences are much more superficial, and you don't get any opportunity to leave items for your other playthrough. Though I do like how they introduce Mr. X in the first playthrough. I imagine a lot of players never saw him in the original game because they only beat the game a single time, and it does add so much to the experience here. These games are different enough, and each one has its own strengths, and for this reason, I think that if you are a fan of the series, you should really give both of these games a playthrough, as they both fall into the upper echelon in the Resident Evil series. If you're looking for a more classic Resident Evil experience, check out the original Resident Evil 2, and if you want a more modern take on that same game, check out the remake. But I would say if you're a fan of the series, go for both of them. Play both of them in the end. Okay, so we're going to end it there. Again, thank you for watching, everybody. We're coming pretty close to the end. Just a few more videos, and I'll also be doing a ranking video, giving my thoughts on the series overall, and where each game falls in my overall ranking. But just thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, drop me a comment with any thoughts, and have a great night, everybody.